I logged into my a different web browser than I usually use so that I could capture a link from a conference I did for class last night and send it out to students who were unable to attend and had requested it. And when I opened up the web browser, the news that plays there before you've entered any web pages presented an announcement that Rush Limbaugh died at the age of 70. This is probably not news to you by the point that you read this, but there's a reason I'm mentioning this and going through it. Immediately then I opened up social media pages looking for information, knowing that that's how information is disseminated, and instead found mostly libelous opinion, most of which was celebratory, like the Munchkins after Dorothy dropped the house on the witch. And that's what prompted this video in the first place. This is not the kind of behavior that is becoming of a civilized society. I believe that it is only a matter of time before God will punish this nation. And in a way, I envy Rush because he won't be around to go through it. He's dead, and he's now no longer subject to whatever vicissitudes of fate are invited upon this nation by the behavior of its residents and denizens. It is a simple matter of fact that Rush is reaping where he sowed. He is a self-admitted cigar aficionado, and we all know that lung cancer is a natural and expectable consequence from smoking, although dying at 70 is a little bit early in my experience. But do we really have to celebrate it and dance on his grave? Does his suffering and his death make our lives better immediately in any way whatsoever? The vitriol I saw on social media over Rush's death is the reason why I left social media. It was no longer a way to disseminate information. It was a way for people to post first and rush to judgment about things without getting all of the information or all the facts. And it evinced that the people who were there were not people who should be disseminating facts or from whom I wanted to hear their opinions. With very little information and most of it biased, people jump to conclusions, often for no other objective than to be the first to disseminate it. And the worst part about this vitriol, whether you liked Rush or not, is that his body was barely cold before they decided to release their frigid behavior on a man they never, ever met, and who probably had very little, if any, influence over their lives. They hate him for only this reason, that he did not validate their worth. Well, welcome to adulthood. I only listened to Rush because when I was married, my wife made me do so, which is ironic because she didn't really espouse the principles for which he stood. She was basically a rhino. She was everything people hate about Republicans, in that she was a Republican because she wanted to get rich. And most of the people who want to get rich identify as Republicans. And I haven't listened to Rush for years. It's been at least 7 years since I listened to him because I didn't really like how I felt listening to what he had to say. And that if I wanted to know what he had to say, I could always just try and track down the blurbs that were posted to his website every day and find out if there was anything interesting he had to say. I also couldn't really understand why, as wealthy as he was still hawking all these other products to enrich himself. But that's not everything to him. Just like every man, almost everyone is too complicated to be covered correctly in 280 characters in a tweet on the internet. And somehow being associated with him attracts the same ire on social media as owning any paraphernalia from a particular German regime would invite. So here are my concerns about this behavior and why I believe that the response to Rush's death evinces a period of suffering and judgment on our nation, on our civilization that we deserve. Number one, celebrating the death of someone you dislike simply because you dislike them is unbecoming of a human being. People are very complicated. Everyone makes mistakes, and yet it seems like it's okay only for certain people to make mistakes, the people you like and the people who like you. And everyone else deserves to be condemned by your wrath down to hell. For which goodness, O Lord, we thank thee, right? And wishing that Rush Limbaugh burns in hell or pitying the devil because he has to spend time with Rush evinces that you have some growing up to do. We are told by those who claim to be our betters that all human life is precious, but some is apparently more precious than others, because when his life ends, they celebrate it, and when other people's lives end, they mourn it. Now, this is not to say that there are self-identifying Republicans who don't celebrate the death of others. This is a commentary on our childish civilization and the behaviors that will evince upon us the just deserts of the behavior that in which we are currently engaged. These same people who are celebrating Rush's death take exception to the notion that all lives matter because they don't believe that. In fact, many of them, if you look through the rest of their social media, probably have some variation of this idea that the world would be a better place, peaceful, happy, free, and successful if and only if all the conservatives suddenly cease to exist. Which is ironic, since it is not liberals who voted for, wrote, or endorsed the Constitution by which we live. But the response to the death of a person that you don't like tells me more about you than your response tells me about the person that you don't like. There are some people with whom the world is better without. But I've seen an execution, and one execution is enough. I do not need to see any others. And if death is tragic, then all deaths are tragic, even the deaths of people you don't like. The second reason I believe this is evidence of our impending doom as a society is because there are people who in our country claim they believe in evolution, but themselves behave as if they were not very evolved. It is very tempting to celebrate the misfortune of people that you dislike. This is normal human behavior. It is, however, unbecoming of a civilized society, in particular one that is built upon Christian values and filled with people who identify with and claim to be Christians. I have not looked to see what Joe Biden's response is, but it would be interesting to see what side he echoes, which will tell me a lot about what his Christian belief actually means to him. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I was personally glad to see her gone. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't post media to it. It was because I knew that as long as she was there, there was no way that the Supreme Court's decisions were going to change in a way that benefited me. Now, that doesn't mean that her replacement is going to make decisions that I prefer and that I like or that benefit me, but it meant that with her departure, there was an opportunity for change. I had a dean when I first started working in Nevada higher education who was the same kind of person. And I don't mean politically speaking. I mean that she was the kind of person that as long as she was the dean, there was nothing that was going to change for me for the better, because she hated me personally because of my religion. And so when she left, I knew that was an opportunity for there to be a different kind of an environment that gave me opportunity. I don't celebrate her departure. I have no idea what's going on in her life. I hope that she lives long and prospers, because she's no longer any problem for me whatsoever. And that's the great irony of this, is Rush Limbaugh is dead. He is no longer a problem in your life if you considered him to be a problem. And so dancing on his grave is really a childish and unevolved and uncivilized behavior. I don't know how you can call yourself progressive, loving, inclusive, compassionate, and morally superior, and at the same time celebrate the death of someone because they were someone who said stuff that was the opposite of what you want to hear. I mean, how weak must you be that words hurt you so badly that you go to the internet and jubilantly declare your happiness at the death of someone whose only contribution to your life is that he said words you didn't want to hear. I have been actually hurt by people badly, and I do not wish them ill. It's hard to not celebrate their struggles, and it's hard to wish on them good things. But I know that God loves them even if I can't see why or how. for the same reason he loves me, even when I don't deserve it. And that if anyone deserves punishment, it is all of us. Because we like to say, no one's perfect and everyone makes mistakes, and then act as if somehow ours don't matter when we compare them to someone we don't know and don't like. The third point is that all men have weaknesses, and so in celebrating the demise of someone whose weaknesses we don't like, invites the same judgment by the world or the universe or whatever you believe in on ourselves. The same people who are now dancing on Rush Limbaugh's grave forget that they have flaws too. Abraham Lincoln is attributed with saying that if you look for the bad in mankind expecting to find it, you surely will. And it invites us to view their lives with the same scrutiny as they chose to look at Rush Limbaugh. Are there skeletons and weaknesses in his closet, in their closets? Have they broken laws? Do they deserve the same kind of ire that they now pile on to someone they don't know and don't like? They can't even manage to give him a moment of silence and shut up for a day, which is pretty damn pathetic. It is, however, normal human behavior that we lionize and look for the good in those we like, and we paint everyone else in caricature. We have been warned as a society, whether you believe in Jesus or not, that if you only love them that love you, what do you more than others? Even people you hate do that. And yet these are the same people who will say they are superior to us because they are rich or famous or won an election, and that because they are of their superiority, they are qualified to lord over us. Perhaps this is why Shakespeare reminded us that the evil that men do lives after them, while the good is often interred with their bones. Unlike Caesar in that play, there won't be a large number of Mark Antonys to orate over Rush, and even if there are, their voices will not be given the same platforms and pulpit from which to preach their ideas. Instead, the others will be given a chance to propagandize it exactly how Mark Antony warned. Because for all of Caesar's flaws, it's not like all he ever did was make mistakes. Nobody does everything right or everything wrong. If you bring up the memory of any villain or someone that you view as such, the people often forget that there were people who liked him. Sometimes people who loved them, people who lived with them and were benefited from their lives. Rush has a family and friends. He influenced people in powerful ways, but they won't bring up the Marine Corps and Law Enforcement Survivors Fund, whatever it's called, or the telethon for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society that he endorsed and supported. They will only talk about how he was a right-winger, knowing that most people will automatically lump him together with a particularly radical right-winger who once committed atrocities. But even that particular right-winger who once committed atrocities was loved. He had a girlfriend too. He had a dog. He had friends. He had people, including some of his own commanders, who defended him because nobody is perfectly evil. And even that particular evil right-winger who once committed atrocities was a child of God. And Jesus suffered in Gethsemane for him too, if only that particular person chooses to avail himself of the power of the atonement. For many years and in many blog articles and videos, I have long espoused this belief that I share with C.S. Lewis. In the 1963 edition, which is why I have like several copies of it because it's out of print, of his book, The Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis in the introduction says the following: I do not believe that if you take away all that is good in man, you are left with a bad man. I believe that if you take away all that is good in him, you are left with nothing at all, end quote. Because we are all stardust. We are all the same fruit of stars. Whether you believe we are made by God or made by the universe, we are all made of the same stuff. And if we are made of the same stuff, then we are all either saints or all either sinners. And there is no middle ground for it to be, oh, the people you like are good and the people you don't like are bad. That is an amateurish and childish emotion and belief. Especially if you claim to be a Christian and identify as such. And any person who identifies as a Christian and condemns Rush because they don't like what he had to say needs to be sure that you are on the same side as Christ in all things, or you will get the same consequence. Remember that Jesus taught his own disciples that with what judgment we judge, we shall be judged, and with what measure we meet, it shall be measured to us again. If your metric is to condemn those who disagree with you and oppose you to hell and the devil, then you best be sure that you are 100% on Jesus' side, or you will get essentially the same condemnation from Christ that you ascribe to and expect Rush to get. Remember that one day you will die, and people will probably remember your sins too and proclaim them from the pulpits of public opinion. Beware the temptation to rush to judgment. All men need Christ, and whether Rush needs him more than you is not the important part. The important part is this is an opportunity to decide how we want to be remembered and whether or not we want people to remember us for the good that we do, or if they want to treat us with the same vitriol and vehement opposition that we have given to those we do not know and do not like. Religious or not, we like to be judged by our intentions while we judge others by their actions. This is a completely inappropriate and unlikely and illegitimate way to look at the world. If you judge people based on their intentions, then you must also be prepared for them to judge you based on yours. And if you judge people by their actions, then you must be prepared for them to judge you the exact same way. To dig through your life looking for dirt, to go into the closet and find your skeletons and ignore all of the other things that you have done, which is completely unchristian and uncivilized. As Christians, we believe that Christ hung for a moment so that we do not have to, that it is possible for a man, regardless of what he has done, to become better because of what Christ has done. And if you want to be judged if you want to judge Rush on your actions, then we must judge you on yours. And it is completely unbecoming of a people to judge and condemn a person because we don't like them. Because there are plenty of people who don't like these people too. As near as I can see, Rush had good intentions. And if good intentions lead to hell, I'll see all of you there too, one day, very soon. Godspeed and good luck. And if you are a person who wants to do right, I hope your life turns out right. And even if you're someone who's done me wrong, I wish them good too. People have tried to destroy my life, but I am totally content living and let living, because an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Godspeed and good luck.